how much do you really know about what turns you on? Probably have some sort of faint idea, but if you had a better clue about what your desires were, you have an entire world of eroticism that can be unlocked for you. So today, we're going to talk about 3 tools in order to discover your turn-ons. Ladies and gents, I'm Brandon the Dom, and let's go ahead and dive in. First, let's discuss why it's even important to understand what your turn-ons or your desires are. The big reason is that if you understand what your desires are, then you actually can have them fulfilled. 1, because you can be seeking out opportunities in order to have that fulfilled. But 2, and most importantly, is that you can communicate it to your partner. Look, your partner is not inside your head, and you're not inside your partner's head. So you have to be able to communicate with each other. And if you don't know what turns you on, how are you going to be able to communicate that to your partner? And if your partner doesn't know what turns you on, well, then they're not going to be able to fulfill your desires. And then you're going to feel unsatisfied, maybe even a little resentful. So in order to understand what turns us on, what our desires on, we're going to use 3 different tools in order to explore the erotic mind. Now, the erotic mind is something that's coined by Jack Morin, who has a very, very good book written in the 90s called The Erotic Mind. And it basically leads you through how your desires are built inside your head. Because our biggest sex organ is our brain. Inside the book, he talks about the core erotic theme. This is basically patterns and behaviors that are repeated over time that eventually become your turn-ons. There's certain things that will trigger arousal for you. And these are built through different experiences that you have all the way from childhood up into adulthood, different fantasies and interactions that all make up these little triggers that cause arousal. And the more that you understand what these triggers are, what the experiences are, what the fantasies are, the more that you can create actual real life experiences that have those triggers embedded. And what we're specifically looking for is feelings, the feelings that you get from those experiences that cause the arousal. Because sometimes you're able to take that feeling and use a different experience for it to trigger. If we take this outside of the realm of arousal and just look at another emotion, let's say joy, cookies might bring you joy and a dog might bring you joy, but those are 2 different experiences. And if you know that the core feeling that you're looking for is joy, well, then you can choose to spend time with the dog rather than eating a plate of cookies. Very simple example, but it's the same thing with arousal. You can choose different sexual experiences or different ways that your partner interacts with you, different ways that you talk, different ways that you dress, all these different things in order to trigger those same feelings that you're seeking. So enough with the preamble. Let's go ahead and get into these 3 tools. The first tool is using an erotic journal. Basically, an erotic journal is you recording what turns you on through different fantasies, experiences, different thoughts that you have that cross your mind that bring you arousal, and the different types of porn that you engage it with. I'm going to lead you through the different steps in order to use an erotic journal in order to explore your own erotic landscape in your mind. So the very first step is I want you to make a list of everything that turns you on. So these can be fantasies, they can be different experiences that you've had or that you want to have, different thoughts that maybe come throughout your mind during the day, or thoughts that when you're engaging in a sexual experience, what sort of things are bringing you arousal in your mind? And then what sort of porn or erotica do you engage in? As you're going through this process, I want you to avoid any judgment or questioning where that thought or fantasy comes from. I just want you to write it down. And the reason being is because we're going to move beyond shame. Because the reality is let's say I had a button here on the side of my neck that if I pushed it, it would bring a lot of arousal and excitement and all those feel-good chemicals that you get during sex. Well, the reality is most of us are going to sit there and we're going to press that button. It feels good, right? And we don't question where that button came from, and we don't question, are we a good person or should we like this thing? We just happen to know it's one of our triggers to bring arousal. So again, I want you to write these things down without shame, without judging yourself, and without questioning where it comes from. Because we don't necessarily ever have to do those acts or engage in those fantasies or do those things. We're looking for the feelings underneath, and we'll talk about that in the next step. After you write these things down, you're going to have probably a big list, and I want you to take a break because you're probably pretty aroused, right? Like you're going through all the things in your mind that arouse you, and you're thinking about them. And we're talking about engaging the biggest sexual organ here. So you're probably sitting on the edge of your seat, like really fucking horny at the moment. So what I want you to do there is go take a break, go take a walk outside, take a cold shower, or even rub one out. No judgment there. But I basically need you to separate all that excitement so that we can get into the next step. Now, the next column, right next to all of those thoughts and fantasies and things that turn you on that you've written down, in the next column, I want you to write down how that thought, that fantasy, that experience, that type of porn or erotica you engage in, how does it make you feel when you engage in that? What are the feelings that come up that bring up that arousal? So, for example, in my own erotic template, a lot of the feelings that come up that bring me arousal are feeling naughty or like something's very taboo, feeling very desired by the other person. I feel really appreciated by that other person. Sometimes I feel more primal, like more base instinct, just acting out of that sexual desire, sexual urge. Feeling respected and feeling worshipped. So a lot of the time in my erotic landscape, those are the feelings that come up most often for me. And the reason that these emotions are important goes back to what I've been saying this entire video, that these are what we're actually seeking when we're engaging in something. Pretty much everything that you do in life, you're looking for a state of feeling. You want to feel a certain way. And sex is no different from that. We're seeking certain feelings. So if we can understand what those feelings are, we can look at the different types of experiences or triggers that will bring that feeling and engage in ones that we actually want to engage in with. I know sometimes we have maybe even very dark fantasies, and they're fantasies that we would never want to live out, but they're very exciting. We understand those feelings. Maybe there's experiences that we would want to live out that would bring those same type of feelings. So for example, a very popular one is CNC, which is consensual non-consent. That can be very extreme for some people, but there are other acts that you can do that sort of bring up the same feeling. So maybe stepping into the world of bondage a little bit and just having your partner play there may help bring up some of those feelings, maybe being restrained down a little bit against your will, but it's not reaching all the way into CNC territory. We don't have to go from 0 to 100 right off the bat. Once you have your turn-ons and then you have the emotions that brings up, then what I want you to write down is activities that trigger that feeling. And this is what I've been talking about. Some of these feelings, there's other activities or things that will trigger that feeling for you. And I'd like you to write all of those down. So any other time that, you feel naughty, what are all the activities around that you feel naughty? And write those down. I'd also like you to write down partner qualities. So the other person that you're engaging with that trigger that feeling. If you're submissive, obviously having a dominant partner, somebody with a dominant personality, with dominant behaviors are going to trigger that submissive feeling in you. But there may be very specific things about how they look or the way they dress or the way they talk or the way they move, certain actions that they do. I want you to write down triggers there that create that feeling. These two columns are going to be very important for you, activities and partner qualities, because then this means you can craft different experiences from those to seek those feelings. And the more you know that, you have just a world of eroticism that you can go explore, just putting different combinations of activities and different triggers together to create entirely new experiences. So the erotic journal is a very, very good internal look about what's going on from our perspective, which is fantastic. I'd always recommend starting there. You're the person that knows your inner world the best. However, sometimes it can help to get an outside perspective, to gain just a little more clarity. Sometimes we don't know the words or ways to express ourselves. And so it's hard to put in words to write down. So the next couple tools are going to be able to help you get an outside perspective about your internal world. But again, always start with you first, the internal world. You're the expert of that. So the second tool is erotic quizzes. These are basically questionnaires, self-assessment tools to kind of give you an idea about, usually when people have these same sorts of fantasies or these same sorts of feelings, that they usually label themselves in this way. So I'm going to show you 5 of my favorite erotic quizzes. The first quiz is the Erotic Blueprint quiz, which is made by Miss Jaya. And basically what this quiz does, let's see if we can scroll down here, is it basically gives you a report about your erotic blueprint. And in the erotic blueprint, they put it into 5 categories, which are sexual, sensual, energetic, kinky, and a shapeshifter, which a shapeshifter is basically all of them and can move between all of them and enjoy it, or is seeking that. This gives you a really good idea about how to kind of craft your experiences. If you're a very sexual person, you're going to focus on very sexual acts, oftentimes all around your typical sexual acts, oral, intercourse, so on and so forth. But if you're a more energetic person, you may be seeking things that are more in the Tantra realm, where there's a very energetic, embodied experience between you and your partner. And these things are important to know because if you're a very energetic person and your partner's a very sexual person, well, your partner's just going to want to get to intercourse as quickly as possible. But you have a lot of buildup trying to transfer that energy between two people. And that can come in conflict sometimes. So it's good to know what your blueprint is. Personally, I'm a shapeshifter, so that means I like to enjoy all of them, but it also means sometimes I don't always get my needs fulfilled if I'm not expressing those, which is why we're going through this, is to understand your needs, understand what your desires are. The second one is a classic, which is the BDSM test. Pretty much if you've ever been in the scene, been a part of any sort of kink community, this is how has come up. It's very, very basic, but it's very good if you're a beginner, just to kind of give you an idea about what the different archetypes are within BDSM and kind of where you may fall in that. So understanding if you're dominant, if you're submissive, if you like to do H play, if you like degradation, if you like being a masochist or a sadist, all those different things. Very easy to do. Highly recommend. You'll see it everywhere. The third one is from Sexual Alpha. It's also a BDSM test, very much like the other one. However, I like this one a little more because it goes in depth about what those archetypes are. So if you happen to come back with something that says you're primal, it gives a good explanation of that because people don't always know what that means, especially if you're just starting out in the scene. So I highly recommend this one just for that extra explanation. The next two are created by Ayala, who's both an SW and a researcher in this realm of sex. She does a lot of independent research through all of her different communities and puts together these big tests. So this one is the ultimate taboo test. This is pretty much going to give you every sort of kink, every sort of taboo fetish, and help you walk through those and tell you where you fall, basically in comparison to the rest of the people that have also taken this test. It's a really good introduction to just like, what is this stuff? Like kind of being introduced to things and then finding out if you actually desire and like those things. So I really like this one. And then the second one that she also has is the BDSM archetype survey. So you can see it takes about 15 minutes to do. These pages are not super designed or anything. But this one is also very cool because I find it a little more insightful about your archetype and what you'd like, and how that matches and maybe not matches with other BDSM archetypes. So this can be helpful when you start looking for partners and understanding, okay, if I'm a dominant, what kind of sort of submissives am I looking for? Because there are different types and, where do you fall on the scale of how much pleasure you want to give, take, what kind, if you want to give pain, take pain, so on and so forth. So all 5 of those quizzes are fantastic. Those quizzes can also be really fun for both you and your partner to do. So I always recommend that you guys take the quizzes separately. You kind of understand who you are, and then you can come together and share what your results are, which can just be really fun. All right, the third tool is a little more intense. So you can use the first tools and gain a whole lot of knowledge about yourself. Specifically, the first tool, if you're only going to do one tool, I recommend the Erotic Journal starting there. It's going to be fantastic. And I would even recommend reading Jack Morin's book, The Erotic Mind, because it will give you some more in-depth explanation and also show you it's pretty normal to have some of the fantasies and turn-ons that you do. Like, you are not abnormal. And even if you have something that's a fetish that few people in the world actually like or have, there's other people that have that. Like, you are still within a community of people that have that turn on. So you're not weird, you're not bad, you're not abnormal. You just happen to have an extra button on the side of your neck that you can push that other people can't, which is how exciting, right? Don't I wish I had like 20 buttons that I could push? So keep that in mind. But the third tool is a sexual disclosure. So basically, a sexual disclosure is entering in a space with somebody that you really trust. So I recommend, if you don't have a partner or somebody that you've built a really safe container with, that you do this with a therapist. but you enter into that space and you basically disclose your entire sexual history. So you're going to disclose all the sexual partners that you had and what that experience was like, what came up for you, the feelings and thoughts around that experience. You're going to disclose all your desires, all your kinks, and all your turn-ons. And then you're going to disclose any shame or guilt you feel around past partners, past experiences, or around your turn-ons and desires. So you can see this as a very, very vulnerable exercise. You're basically putting your entire inner world, a part that we never show anybody else except for people that are really close to us, and putting it out for somebody else to see. And our fear in that is for somebody else to judge. And this is why I highly, highly, highly recommend you do this with somebody that you absolutely trust, that you've built a container of non-judgment and open communication with, because otherwise you're never going to want to do that again. And the reason that you're doing this is because it's going to basically bring all that up. Sometimes when you're talking to somebody else, you say stuff that you weren't even aware of in your own mind. It also allows that other person to be a mirror for you. So they're really just there to listen. They're not there to fix you. They're not there to give advice. They're there to be a mirror and help reflect back what you've said, what turn-ons you said you had, and what shame and guilt around those that you said that you had. But the second thing it's doing is also training you to be vulnerable. You're going to go through this huge thing, especially if it's the first time you've ever done it. You're going to go through this huge undertaking of showing yourself like very raw, and you're going to see on the other side that you're okay. Like you're going to walk out of that room later on and you'll probably feel a lot of like anxiety, shame, and guilt. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I said those things. And you're going to realize you're still going to go home. You're going to eat. You're going to wake up the next day. You're still going to keep moving on. And the world has not ended and you have not died. And that's important because now you have that as a reference experience. So when you want to start sharing some of these things, and not in full detail, you don't have to share your erotic mind with everyone, but with those people that you trust and you want to build a deeper connection with, you can start sharing bits and pieces a lot easier. You're going to have a lot less shame around it. And you're going to have the experience of, oh, I shared this once with somebody else and, they didn't run away. I didn't die. Everything was okay. And it's going to be okay if I share this turn-on or I share this fantasy with that other person. As you use any one of these tools or go through one of these experiences, just have a lot of compassion for yourself. Remember, try and not do this with judgment about what comes up and just understanding what turns you on. A good practice to do, which often comes from Buddhism, is just being aware, being basically an onlooker of the person that you're analyzing. You can almost kind of pull yourself above yourself and see, okay, I'm kind of studying this thing like it's a foreign object. What are all the things that turn this foreign object on? And that can help you disassociate from the shame that may be coming up. And then once you're ready, you can re-engage that and start to melt away that shame. And once you know all of these turns-ons, you've gone through these exercises, the fun part comes is like, oh, now I can start creating experiences that facilitate those turn-ons. I can tell them to my partner and they can turn me on better, which just makes for a better experience all around. Your partner's like, oh my God, thank you. And you're not in uncharted territory. Like, I actually know what turns you on now. Like, I'm going to want to do those things. And you get better sexual experiences. So take the time to actually understand your erotic mind, befriend it, find those buttons that you can use to turn yourself on. If you're having struggles with this, or you want to start engaging in that third tool, which is the sexual disclosure, if you think that's something that could be really helpful for you, I offer coaching around sex and relationships. You can schedule a free 30-minute call with me, see if this is something that's right for you. We can start talking about some of your questions and giving advice about sex and relationships in your world, and specifically diving into some of your turn-ons and maybe ways that you want to start expressing those. And if it is right for you, then we can schedule a session later on and go into one of these deep dive sexual disclosures and really help you explore every facet of your erotic mind. So again, you can find the link for that in the description below. Schedule a time with me and we can jump on a call. As always, thank you so much for your time and attention.